So here's the thought-provoking idea for you. What if the true measure of a great civilization isn't its biggest buildings or its most advanced technology? What if it's something a lot quieter, something much more personal? Today, we're going to unpack an argument that really challenges the way we think about progress.
Okay, so a legal case and a moon mission. What in the world do they have in common? I mean, they sound like they're from completely different planets, right? But the analysis we're looking at today suggests they're actually two sides of the very same coin. And that coin helps us figure out what a society is really worth. Let's start putting the pieces of this puzzle together.
All right, first up, we've got something super personal. It's one single person's struggle for justice, trying to overturn a wrongful conviction. This is where you see what a society is really made of. Can an ordinary person actually get a fair shake when they're up against the full power of the state? Then we zoom way out, from one person to an entire nation. Think about a big geopolitical dispute over territory, a sovereign claim. This is all about national pride, global power, and how a country looks on the world stage. It's that classic grand achievement a nation loves to point to. And our third piece? Well, it's about reaching for the stars, literally. A huge achievement like a Starship test flight. This stuff represents our incredible technological skill and that deep down human drive to just push the limits of what we think is possible. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle, a moment of pure national prestige. Something like winning a Nobel Prize. It's that global stamp of approval, that recognition for being at the top of your game intellectually and culturally. It's a huge sign that a nation has truly arrived. So, let's put it all together. We have a personal legal fight, a national border claim, a technological marvel, and a huge international award. The analysis we're digging into uses these very different examples to ask a really important question. What's the real benchmark of a civilization? Is it the big, spectacular stuff, or is it the quiet, steady delivery of justice? And this is really where the whole argument clicks into place. In one corner, you've got all the things that grab the headlines, the Starship flights, the Nobel Prizes, the global influence, the glory. And in the other corner, you have the quiet, often invisible foundations of a decent society. Fair trials, free speech, protecting the vulnerable. The author's whole point hangs on this question. Which column truly defines a great civilization? Is it what a nation can do, or is it how it treats its people? So how do we even begin to answer that? Well, the analysis we're examining proposes two very specific tests. The first one requires a society to take a hard look in the mirror, to look at its own system of justice. Now, to really get why this first test matters so much to the author, we have to talk about something they call the historical cycle. It's that classic story we've seen again and again throughout history, right? A dynasty or a nation rises because it's built on things like virtue and fairness. But then it rots from the inside out because of corruption and injustice, and eventually it falls. For the author, the biggest challenge any civilization faces is figuring out how to break out of that cycle. And this leads to a really specific and, pretty charged example from the source material. This quote here basically translates to, "The wrongful case of CETC in Beijing is the standard for testing whether the CCP chooses to uphold justice or protect evil and break out of the historical cycle." Now look, let's set the specific politics of this particular case aside for a moment. The underlying idea is what's really important here. The author is basically saying the real test of any system isn't whether it makes mistakes, because all systems do, but whether it has the courage to correct them, especially when it's hard or embarrassing for those in power. So let's just quickly recap this first benchmark. It's all about internal justice. It's a measure of a nation's character, its willingness to admit it got something wrong, like a wrongful conviction, and fix it. It creates this showdown between doing the right thing for an individual versus protecting the powerful. And in the author's view, choosing justice is the only way to break that destructive historical cycle we talked about. Okay, on to the second test. The author argues that this one is a benchmark for any major world power, any country that claims to be a leader on the global stage. And this test is all about freedom of speech. And they lay out this really precise scenario for us. Picture this. A vulnerable person is trying to get justice against some powerful authority. The big media outlets, well, they're not interested. So they go to social media, they go online, anywhere they can to get their story out. According to the author, the real test of a society's commitment to free speech is what happens right then and there.
can that person speak their truth without being shut down? It all boils down to whether you protect the speech of the powerless. All right, so we've got these two different tests. Let's put them side by side and see what this new measuring stick for civilization actually looks like when it's all put together.
So here it is, the whole framework in a nutshell. You've got two key pillars. Test 1 is about a system's ability to self-correct, to fix its own mistakes. Test 2 is about a society's commitment to protecting the vulnerable. Do you notice the common thread here? Both tests focus on the little guy, the individual up against the system, the powerless voice trying to be heard over the powerful. The author argues that these are the true vital signs of a healthy society. And that really leads us to the core message, the big takeaway from this whole analysis. After all is said and done, after you consider everything from moon missions to Nobel Prizes, the author's conclusion is that a civilization's true greatness isn't found in its grandest triumphs. It's found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. It all comes down to a fundamental commitment to justice and defending free expression, especially for those who need it most. So I guess that leaves us with a question for you. Having heard this argument, what do you think? What's your benchmark for a civilization? Is it the grand achievements, or is it the fundamental rights? It's definitely a question worth thinking about.